Greetings to everyone. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with our weekly live stream and update, and it is good to see everybody. Quite a few people on already. John Budd is NJ5Z, looking for a little help on a two-band radio for 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Been out of ham radio for 20 years. Well, John, a lot has happened in 20 years, and there are gazillion radios that you can look at. Not all, nearly all of the VHF radios are all two-band. They do UHF also, 70 centimeters. There are the usual culprits. There's ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, all of which have a nice selection of FM-only radios and digital radios. Now, all the digital radios, all of them, also do FM. Okay, so you're not shutting yourself out of FM if you like, for example, get an ICOM D-Star radio. There are D-Star, there's Yaesu System Fusion, there is DMR, and a few lesser players in there too. Alinco does DMR, and all of the Chinese radios do DMR as well as FM. There are some Chinese FM only radios. If you're looking on saving money, you can pick up a radio like the GD77 or something like that. If you want a nice Primo radio, the Chinese also make the 878UV, D878UV, which is, what is that? Oh, shoot, I got one right over here. Here it is, right here. This is an Anytone radio. This is a Primo radio from a Chinese company called Anytone. It does DMR, does FM. It's got gazillions memories, all that kind of stuff like that. It's kind of a Primo radio. Get it from Bridgecom Systems in the USA because they actually support them. They're available from a lot of other people in the USA, but if you want it with support, do it with Bridgecom. These are not cheap. If you want a cheap radio, you can pick up cheap radios. I mean, you get what you pay for, but you can get them for as little as 25 bucks. I would try paying more, like 100 for a Chinese radio, and you'll have to pay 200 to 300 for a Japanese radio. So lots of options, lots of options. J72 IMS Ishmael Samuel says, hello, Dave. How am I doing? I'm actually doing pretty good. Optical Man Jeff says, hi, Dave and Augie's from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it's only 87 degrees and clear. Oh, that would be nice. It's currently 79 here at 7,000 feet in the San Juan Range in the north side of the San Juans in Colorado. K9ETE, southeast Wisconsin, that's 8 Bulrick. And VROD Boy Ed, K6SDW from Sacramento, where I've got to think it's a scorcher. I know how hot it can get in the Central Valley there. Well, Californians usually call it the Sacramento Valley or the San Joaquin Valley. The northern half follows the Sacramento River. Southern half follows the San Joaquin River, and Californians don't call it the Central Valley. I remember when I was a kid growing up in California, seeing textbooks with the California Central Valley, and I'm going, where's that? So anyway, VA7WXZ, Brian in Surrey, British Columbia. Imagine it's kind of warm there too. It's drought all through that area. Let's see, Mike Oswald says, hello, Dave, and all the Augies from AA7MO in Kirkland, Washington. Anthony Becerra says, hi. Steve Eden, K0SRE, says, greetings and salutations. Alan says, hello, Dave, from AB8AS. Chris Ferguson, hi from Victor Alpha 3, Alpha Uniform Whiskey. Boyd is KE0OG from Hillsboro, North Carolina. If you're in the hill country, North Carolina is so beautiful there. Good evening from KG5LTL in Rosiada, New Mexico. Rosiada. Is that the right way to pronounce that? It's the C. I don't know if it should be a hard C. Stephen Arbogast, would like your thoughts on the SDR Revolution in ham radio. Nothing wrong with it. It is a very basic revolution in the method of construction. I mean, the gozintas and gozadas are the same. You get an antenna and you got a microphone and a speaker. Okay. It's the implementation method. Whether you use standard 100-year-old superhet designs, it's like a very, very fine steam engine. The superhets available today are just outstanding radios. They're the best of the best. But now SDR, which is the digital way of doing things, has stepped up and is in the process of taking over. This is as significant a revolution as from going to tubes to transistors. And the revolution is by no means complete. Yaesu still does hybrid radios where they do some superhet parts. Superhet means they're heterodyning. They don't do that in the digital. They do it numerically. Hello from Dallas, Texas, from Felipe Lewis. Jason Spring says, hi, Dave, KG6TOP checking in. Paul Gibson, morning from UK, from M0TZO. 9M6 WST is from Malaysia. And Adam has our first contribution to the channel funds, $5 from K0PLN. Thank you. Robert Fowler, greetings from KN1WDS in Amesbury, Massachusetts. Boy, over in that part of the country, you're either getting baked or drowned. Unbelievable amounts of rain there. James Totten or Jim, WA8HUB. Philip Clayton, hello from Tennessee, from KG4LTT. 9M6WST is Dave from, I think he's Dave from Malaysia. Jim Adams says, good evening, Dave. The other Jim Adams, N3ROC here. Can you discuss the saying, all a tuner does is make the rig happy? Well, it certainly does that, but that is not the only thing that it does. It allows you to maximize the power transfer between a 50 ohm radio, which all the transistor radios are, and an antenna which may not resonate at 50 ohms, 0 degrees phase angle. So if the phase angle is off, I can fix that. If the ohmic plus radiation resistance is other than 50 ohms, you can fix that too. It basically, an antenna tuner these days consists of 3 elements, 2 capacitors and a inductor. It's called a T circuit. And they basically can transform just about any impedance to 50 ohms and vice versa. And it doesn't have to be 50 ohms. They were not essential back in the old days of the tube radios, because the tube radios all have what's called a pi output, which is 2 capacitors this way, and then in the middle an inductor. And the inductor is adjusted for which band you're on, and then you tune the plate and load capacitors to match your antenna, and they can match pretty wide things, and the radio is quite forgiving. Tube circuits tend to be very high impedance internally, so they have to have this pi network to match whatever they're putting out. When the transistor radios came out, The way you design transistors circuits is fundamentally different from the way you design tube circuits. And you have to match the impedance to get the energy to go one way and not come back and be dissipated in that transistor. So it protects the radio. But they, until recently, have not incorporated tuners into radios. And only a few manufacturers like Tentec include a wide range tuner in their radios. So you end up with a separate tuner unless you do what I do, which is I build resonant antennas. So the resonant antenna can operate directly into the radio. And the tuner that's in the radio, which is not a wide range tuner, it's only up to 3-to-1 SWR, can sort of top off the tuning of the antenna and work just fine. I don't do that because I do have a tuner that will go up to 10-to-1. It's a little MFJ 993B, very nice automatic tuner, which I don't use with this radio because, like I said, I've taken the time to make all my antennas resonant, so I don't have to do that. But the tuner is misnamed. It should be called a transmatch or something like that. What you are tuning is the circuit between your transmitter output and your antenna. So the antenna, the feed line, and the tuner work together. Okay, and the tuner can match a lot of things together. Now, there are drawbacks to that. Basically, what happens is you send energy in a cycle, RF cycle, out to the antenna, and part of that is bounced back. Okay, you measure how much is bounced back by the SWR. And so if that comes back, it can get into the radio and cause issues with the final amplifier. So the tuner catches that energy, turns around and sends it right back out to the antenna with the next RF cycle. And then part of that is sent back in. And the same thing, it catches it and sends it back. So you've got this constant give and play on the transmission line. If you're close to 50 ohms, there's very little of that. If the SWR is pretty high, like 5-to-1 or something like that, you get this, well, it's called a standing wave, even though it doesn't stand still, but it's a standing wave of this energy going back and forth, being reflected, then caught and sent back, and reflected and caught and sent back. And that develops a fairly high voltage, which means there's a high current, and the current causes what are called I-squared losses, because the, let's see, the voltage, and voltage I-squared R, whatever. Wattage, power. The power is I-squared R. And so the higher the current, you square that, that's how much electricity is turned into heat. You just heat up the transmission line. So if you've got a real high SWR, you either need low loss transmission line, or you got to go fix the SWR in the antenna. Now, low loss antennas, remember, it's I-squared R. If the R on that is high, the current becomes low, and it goes down as the square. So a 50 ohm feed line might lose 10 watts. A 300 ohm feed line, well, let's take 450. It's 9 times this, so 9 squared, 81. It's got 1/81th of the loss of a 50 ohm coax. This is why we try and feed difficult antennas with ladder line. Hope that helped. Okay. Let's see. We've got Adam. Now, you know, Jim, the saying, all a tuner does is make the rig happy. A tuner does do that, but it does many other things beside. I would recommend, if you can, the route I have taken, which is to make your antennas behave properly, feed them with good coax, and then the tuner in the radio has very little left to do. Then you don't lose your signal as heat. James Totten is in Ohio, where I imagine it's warm. Far west area of Missouri, 87 degrees, 39% relative humidity. That's actually pretty good weather, isn't it? Northern Illinois, Augies are dealing with humid 84 Fahrenheit. Nice to be with you from Garrett. Pete Dayton's channel. Pete says hi from South Florida, where 90 is cool. I was stationed in Tampa in the Air Force. I was there 3.5 years. And I gradually got used to the weather. But I'll tell you the reason I left. I was about to get out of the Air Force, and my wife had a job there, and I had a job offer there with Track Microwave. I was going to do engineering on microwave components. And one day we were crossing the Gandy Bridge, which goes across the bay from Tampa to St. Petersburg, a several-mile-long bridge. And we were out for a Sunday drive, and I was just tooling along, and my wife said, "How fast are you going?" And I looked over, speed limit 65. I looked over at the speedometer, and it said 40. I was doing 40. And I said, "I have been in Florida too long. It's time to go back home to California." But I did live in Tampa. Okay, so yes, correct on the pronunciation of Rosiata. Very good. And 8 ILR greetings from Xenia, Ohio, home of the Hamvention, which I hope to get to have next year. I plan to be there. Okay, hello from Richardson, Texas, from Robert Umpleby. Optical Man Jeff, KE0OG says, talking about tube radios, where would you recommend getting replacement axial capacitors, the big paper and metal ones, in the, I'm assuming that he's got LD power supply. Oh, there's some in the high voltage power supply. Get a hold of a magazine called Electric Radio. Electric Radio, do I have it here? It's a magazine. Just look up ERMAG, ERMAG.com. Okay, that will take you to the Electric Radio website. This is a magazine of, by, and for tube radio collectors, repairmen, restorers, and people who just love old-time radio when the filaments would glow. These people are diehards, but there's a bunch of advertisements in there, like from Fair Radio and other places like that, where you can get old parts. A lot of the capacitors, including the big electrolytics, which have high voltage on them. By high voltage, I mean hundreds of volts, 500 volts, 600 volts, sometimes 2,000. You can get modern components. The issue these old restorers have with them is they don't like the way they look. So there's all kinds of, believe it or not, stories of taking the old can that had the old capacitor in it, taking the guts out, putting the new capacitor in the old can, and putting it back in the radio so it looks original, even though it's not. Old radios, you should never try to turn one on until you've done a number of things to it, because a lot of the capacitors are bad. They're very leaky and bad. The old paper capacitors especially. A lot of the resistors have changed value over the years, and you need to do some very thorough work prior to applying any power at all to these old radios. Some of the capacitors, the electrolytics, can be what's called reformed if you apply power in a certain proper way, gradually, in other words. And what you don't want to do is fry parts that you can't get. And the switch contacts on them are all dirty. I have some deoxit up here. I've done several videos on deoxit, which you can use to clean these things and so on. So I hope that helps. Maryland from David Mayer. Kyle Zering from Huntsville, KZ4PIX. K4WTA from Helena, Alaska, checking in. I'm wondering what the weather is up there. I hope you guys are getting rain. Okay, the correction on your name there, Dave. My text earlier called you David. That's fine. Fine, just don't call me late for dinner. I've noticed that people these days don't use diminutives. Diminutive meaning a shortened version of a name. Like I'm David, but I've been Dave all my life. And I noticed about 20 years ago at work that people started calling me David. The younger people started calling me David. And, you know, if somebody is named William these days, they don't go by Bill or Will. They go by William. And it's that way for a lot of things. So there's just a change in the culture. Let's see. Ramsin Purian. How about buying Yaesu FT991 as my first amateur radio? Getting close to take my technician exam, and hopefully when I get my license, I want a radio that does it all. Okay, this is my standard pitch for people who are not yet licensed. My recommendation, best practice, do not purchase any equipment until you have passed the appropriate test. For technician class, that's probably an FM radio or something like that. For general, now is when we want to talk about the FT991A or the competitor from ICOM, the 7300. I have, if you go to dcasler.com, dcasler.com/reference, you will find a list of the components of a reference station. Now, that does not mean that you have to buy those components, but I've bought them and put them together, and they all work together. So it is a reference design, meaning here's a design that works. If you want, you can just duplicate it. Or if you want the DC to light capabilities of the 991, you can put the 991 in there. I've got a standard power supply picked out, power distribution, antennas, switches, coax, the whole 9 yards, the whole station is all laid out in the reference station there. So Ramson, I would recommend that you really concentrate on getting that technician exam, and once you've got the CSCE in hand, buy your technician radio. Then go get the general. If you can get them both at the same time, that's really good. Once you have that general CSCE in your hand, now's the time to buy equipment. One thing you ought to do, even now that you don't have your technician yet, is to go find a local club. Now, the clubs are listed on the ARRL website. Those are the ARRL officiated clubs. There may be other clubs that are not, but a little hard to find them. But the ARRL club list, if you live in a big area like Chicago or something, there will be dozens of clubs around you. You come a place like here in western Colorado, there's only one club in the local area. That's the Montrose Amateur Radio Club. If you go up to Grand Junction, you have the choice of more clubs. Sometimes you will have to do a little club shopping. Go to different clubs 2 or 3 times, and you're really just kind of checking the feel. Do I feel comfortable here? Do these people like me? Do I like them? Is this club going to help me? So on. And then what you will probably end up doing is wanting to buy the same thing that most of the other people have. Now, there'll be a lot of variety, but you'll sometimes find that they tend to gravitate toward a particular FM radio or something like that. The nice thing about duplicating that is now you got a whole bunch of experts around you on doing that radio. Now, I am going to use my favorite word, persevere, and I know you're thinking about my pilot experiences now, but persevere. Don't give up right away. The first time you get a radio, and where's it? Right here. I'm going to turn it on. Okay, it's booting. Please wait. Any tone. Okay, it's coming up. Okay, what do you hear? Nothing. This can be extremely disappointing to a brand new ham who spent a couple $100 or more like $400 for this radio. Turn it on, there's nothing there. That's where you need the club members. Okay, because they'll help you find the repeaters, and they'll be the people you'll talk to on the repeaters and so on. It's just the way FM radios work. There's a squelch in there. So if there's no signal, it will silence it. Okay? Now, HF radio is very different because you can tune around and find signals. Okay, let's see. Let's see, the old Johnson Matchbox, yes. Those are still around, but you don't need to be that complicated. This is from Renee Coley saying, Dave, my call is Hotel Bravo 9 Charlie Alpha X-ray from Switzerland. Question, I have simulated an end-fed half-wave with a counterpoise with MANA software. MMANA is the current rage for antenna modeling software. I don't have it. I need to learn to use it because what I do use, EasyNEC, that I had to pay for years ago, the guy behind it is Llewellyn, is his last name. He is retiring. He's basically closing down the company. There will be no further support for the software. I think he's going to release it into the public domain. That is the software I know. This is the software that most Americans have used traditionally. There's a European software called 4NEC2. The number 4, NEC, the number 2. You can look that up. That's free. But now this new MMANA software is becoming all the rage. I need to learn it so that I can put simulations together with it. Simulated end-fed hardware with counterpoise. Can I measure just both wires of the antenna feed point with a VNA to check the resistance and the reactance? The answer is yes, you can. But remember that you've got to check it at the frequency. You don't need to go as far as a vector network analyzer. There are many different antenna analyzers out there and available. I have the MFJ MFJ 259B. This is a venerable antenna analyzer. It will give you SWR, it will give you the resistance and the reactance, and it will do it from 160 meters up to 2 meters. Okay, it only works in 50 ohm systems, but you can do a lot of other testing with this, like coax length, length to fault determination, and things like that. I also have this, and this Rig Expert was actually sent to me by Rig Expert in Canada, and it's the AA230 Zoom. It's really nice because it does a nice graph for you instantly across any band. And in a lot of the videos that I've done when I'm testing antennas, I'll show you the graph. It's from this right here. This sometimes is a little more flexible because it doesn't do a graph. The graphs on these, you say graph the 40 meter band, it'll graph the 40 meter band. Well, if your resonant point happens to be outside the band, it's a little hard to determine with this. You can do that, but with this, all I have to do is turn a knob and I can go over to that frequency and see that. I was a ham for probably 25 years before I got my first antenna analyzer, which was this. And frankly, I wonder how I ever lived without it. You can pay anything you want for an antenna analyzer. If you want a true vector network analyzer, there is the Nano VNA, which you can get, but it is not straightforward. Repeat, not straightforward how to use it for ham radio, stuff like that. Tom Frericks, one of, he may be on tonight, has taught me a lot about using it, and I haven't really pushed it because you've got to go through a lot of steps to get to the point where it will act as an SWR meter. Okay? And they keep changing the firmware. So as they change the firmware, it also changes the menu. So you need a different set of steps to get to it set up to act as an SWR meter. So I've not pressed the Nano VNA. If you're a Linux type person, you know, somebody who really likes that kind of approach to life, take a look at the Nano VNA. They're less than $100. Okay, whereas something like this is in the $250 range or more. Okay, so let's see. Okay, now Renee, one thing you have to keep in mind is go ahead and check the antenna itself with the VNA, but remember that unless you've got some coax in there, you yourself, your body, is in the near field of that antenna, and you're going to get a weird reading. It's best, if possible, to get out of the near field, and that's where the coax comes in. But then what you are measuring with this is the combination of the coax and the antenna. And if you think about it, that's really what you want to measure, because that's what your transmitter will see. Your coax will act as an impedance transformer. The only way it won't is if your coax is exactly electrically 1/2 wavelength long, in which case whatever is the impedance, regardless of the impedance of the coax, whatever is the impedance at the antenna is what you will see at the other end. That's a special case. The other special case is if you are an odd multiple of 1/4 wavelength. And the problem with that is a low impedance at one end will be a high impedance at the other. But just keep in mind that your coax will transform the impedance from what's actually at the antenna to what you see at the radio. If it's fairly well matched, it will not affect it very much. If the antenna is at 50 ohms and you're using 50 ohm coax to a 50 ohm radio, you'll have perfect transfer with no reflections. But you never find that in practice. A true dipole has a reactive part on the SWR. Furthermore, the real part, the resistance, varies with height above ground. So you want to test an antenna in place, if you can, in place. At least get it way up off the ground as far as you can, but you want to put your antenna in place. Use the coax you're going to use of the length that you're going to use. And the ideal place to check it is right here inside the shack at the radio. Okay? Because anything you've got between the radio and the antenna affects the SWR. That includes if you've got, an amplifier sitting there or something like that, or a meter or whatever. It all affects it. The first rule of antennas is everything affects everything. Okay, let's see what we've got here. I'm sure I'm going to end up missing some, and I'm sorry. Sacramento, God, it must be out there. Man, were you around when a barge hit that bridge? I was in Tampa when a barge hit a bridge. They lost a Greyhound bus in that. There were people who were trying to get people stopped, and cars would swerve around the people trying to get stopped and then drive off the edge of the bridge. Crazy. Let's see. Hello from sunny California. KN6BRO. New tech license, 1 week old. Thank you for all your help, Dave. Well, Trey, congratulations. Welcome to Ham Radio. Let's get you on the air. Jason Spring, what is your opinion on Zepp antennas? Thanks. Actually, the Zepp it's the early version of end-fed antennas. If you take the horizontal part of the Zepp, which is a half-wavelength dipole, and then the vertical part of the Zepp, which is actually a transformer, it's a piece of twin-leader window line, and you put that antenna vertical, you know what you got? You've got a J-pole. J-poles are Zepp antennas, a special case. And I've got up here the double Zepp, a double-ended Zepp from MFJ. They don't sell that particular model anymore, but you can get the single-ended Zepp for 20 meters, and it's kind of like the original end-fed. Works very, very well. Hot but dry Northern California, no humidity. Yeah, oh boy. And let's see. Old Johnson Matchbox, yes, very famous. And lots of good questions here. Brother's name is David. He's always Dave at work with family, always David, yeah. Dave unless he's in trouble. Oh, yes, David. Yes, that was the same with my mother. Your teaching has enabled me to obtain my extra class license and hook me back into the hobby. Well, congratulations, Elwin. And 73 to you, too. Best wishes, KD9SUY. Ranger Smith got his ICOM 7300 before he got his general. But it has 6 meters, which is open to technician, and I knew I was getting my general a month later, which I did. I had a dual band HT before I got tech. I know a lot of people do that. I'm just saying it's the odds. I have seen a number of people buy equipment and then for some perfectly innocent reason have never got their license. I once taught an old guy who was in a wheelchair, older. He repaired watches to eke out a tiny living, and he wanted to become a tech. And back then, you needed to learn the code. And I spent a lot of time with him on the code, and I finally said, "I don't think you're practicing. You're not showing any improvement. I am really sorry. But I'm devoting an evening a week, and it's got to come to an end." And I felt very, very bad about it. The guy was crushed, but he wasn't showing any practice. He wasn't showing any progress either. So, and I know other people who buy equipment and then they have a baby, or their work changes, work hours change, something like that. It's just save your money till you actually get it. Yeah, I want to check my SWR on a hex beam before I raise it to my mast. That's an example of where raising and lowering is very difficult. Now, my hex beam, which is from MFJ, actually does not have any adjustments on it. You take what you get. Fortunately, it's all within the ability of the transceiver to handle. But for something like that, you can try getting it up on top of a ladder. That'll give you some idea. Get help to do this, because hex beams are not dreadfully heavy, but they are awkward as the dickens. They're huge. You think they're small because you see them sitting up on top of the pole, but they're huge. So get help. Don't try to do that alone. I got help putting the thing up. Let's see. Yeah, ladder height, something like that. And understand it's going to change when you put it all the way up. And John Groffen says, greetings from Whyalla in South Australia. Many thanks for what you do. Thank you. Arn Carlson, the support for the Lieutenant Dude version 2.0 antenna has waned after you did not like the word dude in a ham radio item. Rightly so. Oh my goodness. I'm surprised. Oh, I got a whale of an email this morning. Man, I'll tell you. I said something about an Italian antenna based entirely on what an Augie said in an email asking me a question. And I assumed wrong. And I made a statement about the antenna, a couple statements about the antenna, that turned out to be wrong. And the Italian company was furious. And so they sent an email to their American distributor, DX Engineering, and they were furious. And so they sent me an Instagram. And I talked to them at DX Engineering today at some length. And we got everything worked out. I will put a video up with the correct information. The antenna, he called it a baby loop. And the baby loop is in the title of the device. And it is not a baby loop, it's a mag loop. And it's full-size mag loop. And now, the market for this turns out to be people in HOAs, because you can put a mag loop outside and nobody will ever see it. The things are only about 3 or 4 feet high, and you can hide it easily. I know somebody who hides an MFJ mag loop, full-size mag loop, as a bird feeder, with a round circle and the bird feeder hanging down underneath it. Doesn't look like an antenna at all. The MFJ mag loop has a controller that will help you find the tune for it. The one from the Italian company actually can connect to your radio, read the frequency from that, and put the tuner on the manipulate the tuner, that's the capacitor in the antenna, manipulate that to find the tune. So it's a lot more automatic. It's also $2,000. But I asked him how many people are buying these things. Well, he's got back orders for 20, and he says he's sold hundreds. So they're definitely for HOA deprived people. So this is good. Anyway, I apologize for the mistake. I make mistakes. I mean, good grief, I can't do a video a day without making mistakes. So if I make a mistake, please be kind. I'm a 70-year-old man. Send me a comment to the video that says, at such and such a time, you say this, it should be this. Okay? And I get that. And I'll say, probably, I'll look at it if I see it. My assistant has to point me to it. And I'll take a look at it. And if it was a mistake, I'll say, good catch. Thank you. I was wrong. The correct information is this. It's rare that I change a video, but it can be done. Let's see. Al Wilson is here. Felipe Lewis sends $20 to the chat revenue. I may have missed one here because it says 40 total. Did I miss one? Adam K0PLN sent $4.99, $5. Okay, so YouTube doesn't always count this stuff correctly. Let's see. Lightning in my area, had to disconnect antennas. Good idea. I have switches here that have lightning arresters in them, and I put them to ground when there's lightning in the area. And of course, I've got lightning arresters out at the ground. A lot of people put lightning, if they got a tower, they'll put lightning arresters. Also put lightning arresters at the bottom of the tower. Okay. Somebody had a, let's see, it was a flagpole antenna. I just heard about this like today or yesterday. A flagpole antenna had a lightning arrestor there and a lightning arrestor at the ground. And the thing got hit by lightning, and it just completely blew the lightning arrestor to pieces. But his brig and stuff was protected. That's what lightning arresters are for. So he's got a little work to do to get it back together. Felipe Lewis says, thanks again for the videos. Have you ever worked with an ionospheric sounder? Also, can hams utilize it for propagation studies? The answer is, I've read about them. There are explanations in the Amateur Extra Manual, I think, for how to read one of those sounder charts, ionosonde charts. Certainly it's available in the ARRL handbook or wherever you like to study about propagation. There is a book by the League on Antenna Physics, and another one that this is not the right name for it, Propagation Physics, that talk about these ionospheric sounders and how you use them, what they're for. You don't need your own sounder because the data from most sounders is available on the internet, and you can just look at it there. And you can get a lot of information about what part of the ionosphere is doing the reflecting and what part of the ionosphere, like the D layer, is doing the absorption and so on. And they're very useful after a big solar event, so you can see what is happening with the atmosphere. Can hams utilize it for propagation studies? Absolutely. There are multiple things going on with propagation studies. Whisper is designed for propagation studies also by looking at patterns, and this is sort of a not really loudly stated, but a purpose of FT8 and JT9 and all that sort of stuff like that, is you can do propagation studies with that, because since it is now officially the most popular mode in ham radio, you've got a tremendous amount of data on endpoints and frequency, and you can map that and find out, at least over the US and Europe and Japan, where people, are doing what and so on. Zappadoli, yes. What did I? Okay. Ranger Smith Nano VNA. Yeah, Rig Expert is nice. Love the Nano VNA. Like I said, if you're the kind of person who likes Linux, you'll love the Nano VNA. It was the constant recalibration that put me off. Yes, even this one, I think this one came with calibration stuff, so you can calibrate it. I've got another tuner somewhere. Oh, I've got one from Germany. I've got this one. This again is a Linux lover's dream. This is available from the DARC, the Deutsche Amateur Radio Club. And it's at Funk Amateur. Funk in German is radio. Okay, and this thing right here, let's see, how do I get this open? Has special little designs. This one right here is a short. It's got a short, an open, and a 50 ohm. Okay, so you use those to calibrate the thing, which is nice. I mean, none of these, the American MFJ ones certainly don't have anything calibrating them. But it's the same way you calibrate a nano VNA, is with a load that's a short, an open, and a 50 ohm. Okay. Oh, let's see here. David Gold is saying nano VNA isn't really hard to use. David, this is the old classic. My wife says this all the time. What's easy to do is what you do all the time. So if you use it often, you can stay current on the thing. Needs to be calibrated once. Well, yeah, but after a while, I'd probably recalibrate it again. I'm old and slow. Well, that's me, that's for sure. The maze of available version. A little hesitant to buy MFJ. They have a reputation for quality problems. They do. And one of these days, I'm going to get the courage up to call Martin Jew and ask him, what are you doing about the quality problem? I have said many times on many MFJ things that they have a quality problem. They do. I've talked with them. For example, on the Zepp antenna, the 20-meter single-ended Zepp antenna didn't work. And I asked them to send me, understanding the confidentiality, but send me the assembly diagram for it. They did. And the thing was way out of spec. It was too long. It was 6 inches longer on one side than the other. The cable, the window line, was cut in the wrong places, the wrong length. The feed point was at the wrong point. So I rebuilt it to the manufacturing drawings that worked perfectly. And I reported that to them, and I said, you got to do something about this. Okay, let's see. Maze of available options. Let's see. I still like MFJ. And let me tell you why. There are a great many gadgets that only they make. Now, more and more, for example, we're seeing, this is a European, it's made in, not Estonia. Is it Estonia or is it Ukraine? It says right here, made in Ukraine. This is Ukrainian, so it's Ukraine's a very interesting country. I mean, parts of it have been torn apart by war, and at the same time, they're putting out really good stuff. Okay. When MFJ came out with this, they were the only people who came out with it. They really helped push the QRP fad by making some very simple, very nice QRP radios. I've got one right there. And fortunately, it's at the bottom of the stack, or I'd get it out and show it to you. They help popularize that. They have an antenna for everything. They have, over the years, purchased companies that otherwise would have gone bankrupt, like Cushcraft and Highgain and Ameritron and so on. They make every conceivable amateur radio accessory, and there is no other company that does that. And they are the grease that keeps ham radio moving, because all those little extra things you need, like an SWR meter or a power supply or stuff like that, they have it. I have an Ameritron amplifier here that ended up in my lap, fell into my lap. The power supply my wife got for my birthday, it cost more than what I paid for the amp. And it has a slight little thing that indicates something is loose in there, but it does provide this 75 amps at 12 volts. Thanks for the answer. I meant my nano VNA was running out of letters. Okay. Yeah, I do support MFJ. I do wish they would take their quality issues seriously. Okay. Canton de Vaud. Vow. That looks French. Glenn Martin, I have MFJ gear, few problems. Yeah, beauty of amateur radio. Response, I have the Chameleon Zepp and can't wait to use it. Well, good for you. Dave, what was my first novice transmitter? It was an AT1, and a Heathkit AT1. I couldn't get it to work. So my parents purchased for me as my college graduation present a Heathkit Hot Water 16, HW 16. CW only on 80, 40, 15, and 10, which were the only novice bands available at the time. And, oh man, I used to live in daylights out of that radio. I had two crystals. My favorite was 7107. I'd plug the crystal in, tune it all up, and wait for somebody to call CQ. It was about all I could do. I know a lot of the really old timers would tune across the whole band looking for CQs because nobody had the same crystals. Well, shortly after that, they allowed novices to use VFOs. So my parents bought me, I made it an extension of the graduation gift, the little HB10B VFO for it, and then could go anywhere. And the moment I got my general upgrade, it was down to, Henry Radio in West Los Angeles was at the time what HRO is today, was the big supplier of ham radio. And I bought a general radio and traded in the HW16, which I should never have done. But, and ever since then, I've never given away an HF rig. I've got not all of them here, but a number of them sitting here. Okay, just received my DS Commander polls today, 3 days after I put in the order. Does Callum have distribution centers in IS? I think US. He may very well. He left so much more room for those who want to play CW. Thanks for all the videos from Nicholas Allen. Helped me get extra, and now working on CW. From AI7IV. Optical Man Jeff, KE0OG, leaves $10 for the channel funds. We're up to $50 now. Thanks for everything you do. Spike says at least, whoops. It does something worth the 2K, yeah. So does the guy with the bird feeder mag loop also sell fried chicken? I don't know. That'd be interesting. Just put the chicken in the middle. Had my eyes on that MFJ mag loop a couple times. Note there are two. One does 40 through 15. The other does 20 through 10. I recommend the one that does 40 through 15. Okay? And you'll have to get used to the way the tuner works on that thing, and then you can tune it very quickly. It's just a matter of getting used to it. It's not automatic, but it's semi-automatic. Basically, what the tuner would do, you find your frequency, and you push the tune button on the unit, and it will go find the place where the SWR is lost for that. You may have to tweak that a little bit on either side. Now, one thing a mag loop is not good for is a spectrum scope, because mag loops are very high Q, meaning they only receive a little bit on the either side of the frequency you're working on. The rest of the spectrum's all blank. So what you may want to do for that is get a little SDR radio, like the SDR Play. They're around $100, and just get a long wire on the thing out in the backyard, and you can use that on your computer for your spectrum scope. Okay, and see wherever. Let's see. It's always OOS everywhere. Any mag loop that can handle 100 watts is going to be expensive. Yes, it's the capacitor. The capacitor's huge. Now this European one, this Italian one, handles up to full power, 1500 watts on the lower bands, not on the higher band. Okay, Dave, you've done more for ham radio than anyone in history. Oh, I think Hiram Percy Maxim takes that what do you call it, title for that. But thank you for your kind thoughts. KJ7BRZ also sends thanks. Videos to some of the most accurate on YouTube. What is the best SWR meter for 2 meters? Well, this one works on 2 meters, as does this. Both of them do. Now you have to take into account the feed line, because the wavelength at 2 meters is 2 meters. And remember I said that a feed line is a transformer. Well, it repeats those values every wavelength. Okay? So use the same feed line that you're going to use with your radio. Don't use a different feed line to go to the antenna if you can avoid it at all. Okay, thanks for the mistakes. Without mistakes, we never progress. Mike Oswald sends a little token of a guy laughing uncontrollably. And he's about as big and around the middle as I am. Sends $10 for channel funds. Thank you very much. My Alpha Delta Mag Loop mounting bracket made from PP by 3D printing died in 120 Fahrenheit heat in Phoenix. Oh, what a pain. Put in an order for heat-resistant Delrin and will machine the parts myself. Or you could just do aluminum or something. Would it be better to leave the antenna floating instead of connected to ground? I would recommend that you ground it. Because then as the wind comes by, it's going to create some static electricity on your antenna, and that needs to be bled to ground. Otherwise, it can cause mischief. I blew out the front end of a fairly new ICOM radio, a little 2-meter radio, by leaving it connected to the J-pole on the roof with no path to ground for the static, and I blew out the front end on that thing. Fortunately, it was still in warranty. They had to replace the whole front end on it. There's a little tiny board in there. It took weeks to get back. And I felt bad about it because I knew it was my fault that I had blown that thing out. But I told them that, I think. Would we but see, Dave, look up the Loop Baby. It's made in northern Italy. It was a learning experience for me too. Yeah, that's the one. I'm gonna do a little video about it. I told him to send me one for review, and I'll send it back. Now, that's a $2,000 antenna. That's an expensive antenna. DYBM Soda got his first SDR for Father's Day. Bought a no electric rattlesnake to go with it. It's been fun listening. Have yet to get my license, but it's on my bucket list. Well, keep working on it. Oops. Okay. Where'd you never cross the oceans? Oh, my feed here just flew away and went all over the place. Dave has a new project. He has a screw gun out. Yes. Right here. I'll tell you what it is. It's right there. That is a teleprompter. And I use it with my iPad, which goes right there. And then I use teleprompter software, which reverses it. So when I look in here, I see the text, and right behind this semi-silvered glass is the camera. So I used to do videos with the teleprompter all the time when I had the studio in the other room. And then I stopped writing scripts and just did things off the cuff. And I'm at the point now where I think I need to start writing scripts again. So I'll do that. And then this is right here, so we'll have the same view we've always had. Greetings from Poland. SQ9MCQ73. Well, thank you very much, Stanislaw. I appreciate that. I have a 66-foot Zepp, and it's not really that good. 66-foot Zepp would be working on 40 meters. And it depends entirely on the feed. The feed has to be accurate down to the inch. And you'll have to experiment. The length of the feed is 33 feet. And short it at the bottom. And then you need to find the point, it's up about 18 inches to 2 feet, somewhere in there, where you feed it with your coax and you'll get 50 ohms. And you can try finding that point with the antenna analyzer, but it'll take some experiment. Thank you so much for these videos. You have integrity and genuinely honest about your reviews. Keep up the great work. Thank you, David. I sent the amp back to MFJ to be repaired, and I had to call them repeatedly, but still took 4 months to get back. MFJ has had a serious problem with COVID. I've been waiting for something that I ordered for a few months now myself, that I wanted to do a video about. I wanted to do it before summer because it's a device that can allow you to operate with an inverter generator and still get all the power that you need without having to turn the inverter part off. And I haven't been able to get hold of it. I'll have to call them and res them myself, I guess. Okay. I have a spare. Okay. Oh man, I miss Heathkit. Yeah, we all do. I grew up on Heathkit too. First rig was a DX40. Heathkit isn't around. The name is. Somebody has purchased the name and the logo. And he's probably about the 9th in line to try to revive that sort of kit company. And the problem is with modern circuit design and modern circuit boards and with surface mount components, you can't win money-wise. It's cheaper to make the product with these packed circuit boards and all that. They're pennies for this stuff. And you can't, nobody wants to do surface mount kits. So you have to do through-hole kits. And they end up being more expensive than just somebody making the thing and selling it. You know, and I've done some kits just to do kits, okay? I just wanted to do a kit. But even QRP Labs pre-mounts the surface mount components, and they try to keep their prices down. They work very hard to keep their prices down. And I managed to zap my QCX Mini. Sad. I'll have to do a video about that. If mag loops are high Q, how do they work as receive antennas? Just the same way they work as transmit antennas. They have a very narrow bandwidth on the same frequency range that they transmit on. Okay, so in and out. That's often referred to as reciprocity, which is a somewhat overworked idea because these things aren't really actually totally reciprocal. But if a mag loop is tuned for 7.2 megahertz, it will both send and receive on 7.2 megahertz. Now, it may also send and receive on 7.105 megahertz, but it starts to get out of that tune range pretty quickly. Okay, some of the higher quality ones have the vacuum capacitors. Yeah, I know the vacuum capacitors are expensive. I mean, you can spend $400 on that alone. DX40. Analyzers get expensive when they can do 70 centimeters or higher. There are terrible problems using those frequencies. I mean, you're talking a 70 centimeter. Let's see, 70 centimeter would be 7/10 of a meter, so about 2 feet. Okay. That's the wavelength right there. I mean, good grief. There's no way you can get your analyzer up close enough, and you start getting all kinds of weird hand effects and stuff like that when you try and use it. This will go up quite high. This one from Funk Amateur will go to 6 gigahertz. I don't know that I would trust it at 6 gigahertz. I have now the connection on this is BNC. Okay. Now suppose I want to test a well, I've got one right here. Here's the little Anytone radio. Okay. Now suppose I want to test this antenna for SWR. I need a connector. I need a connector between these two, an adapter. That, from there to there, with the adapter, is long enough to be a significant fraction of a wavelength. Okay? So you're going to get weird readings. Because like I said, a transmission line acts as an impedance transformer. If you're dealing with 50 ohms all the way through, fine. But you aren't always. The rubber duck antennas in particular aren't all that good. So that's where you run into problems with measuring impedance at UHF frequencies, is you start getting just the pile of adapters is a significant fraction of a wavelength. Whereas if you do it at HF, so what if you've got a piece of coax this big? It's a tiny, tiny piece of a wavelength. Okay, important thing with mag loop is impedance may not be the same frequency as resonance. I use my nano VNA to find resonance and then match the feed to be as close to 50 plus, 50 meters purely resistive. Note that SWR is very often not lowest at a pure half wave, because a half wave will give you, depending on your height above ground, could give you anywhere from 30 to 70 ohms at a phase delay of about 60 degrees or so. Okay, so as you tune off resonance, the reactance changes and the impedance goes up, and there will come a point in there where the SWR will be at a minimum, and it may very well not be at 50 ohms purely resistive. So keep that in mind. Getting it 50 ohms plus purely resistive is ideal, but normally, and here's where the problem runs in, it might be 30 ohms purely resistive. For example, a vertical antenna at HF, if you make it a half wavelength long and you feed it at the base and you've got a nice radial field, okay, you're going to find that the resistive part of the impedance is about 30 ohms. So even though it's 30 ohms with 0J, you still got SWR issues, okay? You can bring down that SWR if you tune it somewhat off resonance so that as the resistive value changes, the reactive value changes. And remember, SWR is a real number. It's the absolute value. It's a ratio of the absolute value of the impedances. And it's kind of a weird thing. I had to really stop and think about it when that works. But it's really hard to build an antenna that's 50 ohms that is not reactive. In fact, I've never seen one. Okay. Question: How would you ground a mag loop set up permanently? The mag loops that can be tuned remotely all have stepper motors in them to move that capacitor. How would I ground it? I ground the mast. It's a balanced antenna, but it's usually fed unbalanced, and that's the point that you can ground, or just leave it a balanced antenna. Let's see, the cheaper nano VNAs are a little flaky around 500 megahertz, but I have one which is good past 900 megahertz. It was under $100. Good. Can't find a Yaesu 5000 for sale. No. Yaesu has, I understand, recently dropped sales of some of their HF radios. They've got the new FTDX 101D, which is their very nice top-of-the-line radio. Then they've got the FTDX 10D. In Yaesu speak, the D means it has a built-in tuner. Okay. And I believe they've dropped the 5000 to 9000. And my beloved 3000, I've heard they've dropped that. They may have other radios for sale. Yaesu is one of these people that expand their line, then they make their line smaller. What Yaesus are really popular for are the less expensive models that look like little 2-meter mobile radios, but they're actually HF mobile radios. You can get them for 100 watts, you can get them with 10 watts, and they're used extensively by QRPers, by people who do mobile, and so on. So you've got this low-end range of radios. There's quite a few in that list. And then you've got a few of the bigger radios. And my FTDX 3000, hefty fellow. It weighs like 25 pounds. And it's big on the desktop, much bigger than the 7300. Can't find the Yaesu. Yeah, you won't. Put up a vertical dipole. Get a 7300. It's as nice a radio. I put up maybe some of the little tiny specs are different. A vertical dipole for 440, and it hits a distant repeater. It's on a standoff about 18 inches out from my aluminum mast. Does that mast alter the omnidirectional nature of the dipole? Yes, absolutely it does, remembering that everything affects everything. You've got it vertical, which is the way it should be. It should be vertical for FM. Okay, and that mast is acting a little bit as reflector. Okay, So not hugely. Why is Buckmaster off-center fed dipole so expensive? I don't know. The reference station antenna is the MFJ 2010, which is an off-center fed dipole that works on 40, 20, and then also 10 and 6. Using it for 40 and 20 is why I put it in there. It covers all of both of those bands very nicely, which the trapped antennas do not. Now, I've never had any Buckmaster equipment, but it has a good reputation. The smell of rosin core solder still brings back good childhood memories. Yes, and James still does projects from time to time. Is Tram RG8X any good? I do not know. I would stick with Belden. If you can get Belden cable. They make a variety of RG8Xs, all 50 ohms, all easy to deal with, and Belden is a very if you don't want the Belden, if you want to get the times microwave, you get the, oh, and you're going to have to check me here, guys. Is it the LMR 240 that's equivalent to the RG8X? Of course, it's constructed very differently inside. Still waiting on my MFJ 1910 I ordered last month. Yeah, I know. I don't like their new website. It's hard to use. Liberty Cave says always calibrate. Chris Wilson, been modding guitar tube amps, build a combo using my own design based on Grant Willison's Lamington amp. Output of the Vox AC15 style phase split and an AC84 hot rod preamp, I guess. Okay, yeah, we are running out of time, aren't we? I know people send questions to hamradioanswers@gmail.com or use the form at KE0OG.net/ask-Dave. Those questions go into a pot here, and that's where I get the subjects for the daily videos. One of the frustrations is that people really want me to look at their question, and they realize that there's 300 some odd questions in that queue, and I just can't get to them all. And so they start sending me questions to multiple addresses, and then I start getting multiple of the same thing and start getting a little peeved. You know, if you have a problem that, like this problem, the Italian company, I should put up my business address somewhere on the website. But problem is people have found it and they send me their questions. And what I do with the questions is I forward them to hamradioanswers@gmail.com. Now, there's one exception to that, and that is, and I'm going to tell you a secret here. I now write the old Doctor is in column in QST is now mine, and it's called Ask Dave. And you can send a question to Ask Dave, no hyphen, Ask Dave at arrl.org, and it will come to me at my business address. And I have a folder here. And I really don't get that many queries. But this is my folder of questions that have been sent to that address, and it is from these that I write my column. Okay? Now, there's more here than I can write columns for. If it's really interesting, I'll kick it over here to this side and do a video about it. I do approximately, well, if you subtract the Thursday live streams, I do about 28 videos a month. Okay, so that's 28 questions. And then I do 4 in each column. And then I do a video about one of the questions. And I just talked to the league. There's been a mix-up. They're supposed to be available on the digital version of QST. They're getting that fixed. So, let's see. Recall, oh my goodness, making some 10 Heathkit oscilloscopes when I worked in London Tech College. Yeah, they're still around. Is there anything newer than a Dow key for a transmit receive switch for old transmitters? I don't know. Talk to DX Engineering and ask them. They have the widest selection of new stuff for this. They won't have the old parts, but they have the new stuff. The Dow key relays for 100 years. I don't know how long it's been. They've been in business. Stephen Arbogast says he's 69 years old and still can see to do surface mounts with only 5x magnification. I have a microscope right there. Right there. You see the microscope? That's what I use for surface mount. And one of the Augies gave me that. He had an extra one. Okay. Microwave frequencies and above. Oh, I'm sorry. We're running out of time here. Gamma loop. Can you tell me more about it for VHF, UHF, Yagi? Let's see, James, I have a 70 centimeter, no, I have a 2 meter Yagi and a 70 centimeter Yagi, and I think they both use a gamma loop. So remind me to do a video on gamma loops and other loops. There are other ways. A gamma loop allows you to feed a balanced antenna with an unbalanced coax without a problem. Okay. There are all other kinds of feed arrangements for Yagis. The gamma loop allows the element itself to be one element without having to break it in the middle to feed the two halves. And it works. It works, okay. DXE-RG8X is good. Yes, you can get the DX Engineering's own brand of RG8X. Yeah, gamma loop. Okay. Find something with knobs and dials that doesn't work. Let's see, Belden 9913. Okay, that's, I think, an RG8X. Do you feel there will be more hams in 50 years or less compared to today? I don't know. It depends a lot on the young people. There are young people coming into ham radio. They're coming in from the maker side. People who like to make little things. And that's how we get most of our youth. Okay. Other countries, like in Europe, have really worked out how to get youth into ham radio. And the answer appears to be competition. Things like fox hunts, rallies, contests. They do fox hunting over there where you have to run from target to target. I've talked with some German and one Austrian youth at the 2019 Hamvention who were over there to represent Dark. And I asked them how to get youth. And I wish I had had my camera running, because when I asked them about that, man, did the ideas come very quickly. Another thing you have to do with youth is keep them busy. Your average youth today is not somebody who's a lone hobbyist who searches out resources for his hobby. They have to be organized. There has to be something for them, like every week. I worked with Bark Jr. as the junior division of the Boulder Amateur Radio Club for 10 years. And I wrote an article in QST about it, and another one in the online version of QST, which is different today. And that woman who ran the club, Ellie Van Winkle, in 0QCX, who's now Silent Key, she knew how to herd kids around. And they met every week. And I was one of the Elmers who went in and helped them. And that's how my wife and both my kids got their licenses was through that organization. It was pretty fantastic, and I wrote about it. Okay, so here we go. We are at the end. Bought a sailboat on eBay. Trying to cook dinner. Okay. Question about ringing a handy-talkie on a commercial airplane. Will be there a problem going through security with an HT? I would put it in your checked baggage if I were you. Note they have lithium batteries in them. Call the airline and ask. You're not going to be allowed to use it on the airline. Okay, from Felipe Lewis, 73. Okay, we had the total number of playbacks was 1,406. So that's the number of people that stopped by. The concurrent viewers peaked out at 209. We have 172 now. So thank you all very much. This is one of my favorite times of the week to come down here and chat with Augies and try to answer questions. Again, this is Ham Radio Answers, so I'm trying to answer questions, and when somebody has a technical question, I try and spend a few minutes on it. And some of them, it's just easier for me to make a video about it. We do videos in batches now, about a week's worth at a time. And hopefully this thing will help me with getting the uhs and ahs, and I tend to repeat myself. So, thank you all very much, and I'm going to say 73.